Hello, I'm That Geeky Gamer, and welcome to my show. Just like with films, comic books and video games have had a somewhat difficult relationship, haven't they? I mean, there have been comic book-based video games that haven't totally sucked. In fact, there are more decent comic book games than film games, but they still suffer under the same general rule as film-based games. They usually suck. This is more evident with some material than others. For instance, when it comes to superhero games, Superman hasn't been treated quite as well as Batman. Most Superman games suck balls, while most Batman games just kinda suck. However, our subject for today does anything but suck. It's probably the best comic book game and definitely the best superhero game in recent memory, if not of all time. This game basically showed the world how good a superhero game could and should be, and it provided one of the best and most comprehensive superhero experiences of all time. Anyway, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here, so let's just get this review started. Today, we are going to take a look at the wonderful masterpiece that is Batman Arkham Asylum. Let's start by going over a few basics. This game's graphics are amazing. It has a very cool look and captures the mood of Batman perfectly. The animations are also unbelievably good and makes the characters seem that much more real. The animations during dialogues are a bit stiff and awkward, which can sometimes be a bit of a shift from the rest of the game, but all in all, the animations are great. The character design is, let's be honest, pretty damn awesome. A lot of people have their own opinions as to which iterations of the various characters and their costumes they prefer, but in my opinion, the designs used in this game are among the best. Okay, so some designs might not be as good as others. For instance, I'm actually not sure if I like Harley's costume or not. It's fairly hard to deny that it is pretty sexy, but I don't know, a part of me just wishes I could have seen her in a traditional jumpsuit jester outfit. As I said, I can't deny that her costume in the game is pretty hot though, so I guess I can't really complain all that much about it. Speaking of character or art design, Arkham Asylum actually has something the latest Batman films didn't. No, I'm not talking about certain characters or settings or something like that. Those sort of things go without saying. I'm talking about the fact that Arkham Asylum actually has a real Batmobile. Say what you want about the so-called Tumbler from the films, but just imagine for a second that you had never seen or even heard about a Batmobile before. What to you would a true Batmobile be? Would it be this? Or would it be this? Yeah, that's what I thought. This is a Batmobile. This is what it should look like. Don't get me wrong, the Tumbler from the film is okay as well, and I think it's really awesome that they actually made it instead of just using CG or a plastic model or whatever, but it's basically just a tank.
She was built as a printing vehicle.
There's nothing about it that really says Batmobile. The Arkham Asylum version, however, screams Batmobile. Anyone can take just one look and they know that is a Batmobile. Before we move on to the storyline, I just have to mention one more thing. The voiceovers.
What? Don't you trust me?
As you may or may not know, the voices in this game were done by the same cast as in the Batman animated series. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it has all the original cast members. There might be a few casting changes here or there, but for the most part, I think it's the same people. The main cast is at least the same, like Kevin Conroy as Batman.
He surrendered almost without a fight. I don't like it.
Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn.
You're the detective, you tell me.
And the masterful Mark Hamill as the Joker.
Love what you've done with the place.
Yes, the very same Mark Hamill who played Luke Skywalker. And if you think his performance in the Star Wars films were good, you're going to be blown away by his Joker performance. Seriously, if you haven't seen or heard Mark Hamill's rendition of the Joker, Go check it out now. I'm serious, do it right now. Find some clips on YouTube, watch some of the animated series, or play some of this game. I'll wait. What? Why are you still sitting there? It's like you expect me to find some clips of Mark Hamill's Joker for you. You can't find some on your own? What do you think this is? Some sort of web show? Okay, here's some clips of Mark Hamill as a Joker. Sorry.
Joker burgers! Ha! Talk about a happy meal. I set a trap, and you sprang it gloriously. Since my side splitters don't tickle you, how about a skull splitter?
Knock me off!
I dare you.
End this! Pull the plug! Stop me once and for all!
Isn't that just a fucking perfect Joker? Seriously, doesn't he just nail this character? Feel free to disagree with me, but I for one think Mark Hamill is the true Joker. The voice, the mannerisms, and not to mention the laugh. It's all just perfect. Okay, so maybe Mark Hamill wouldn't have worked as a live-action version of the Joker. I mean, I'm not really sure I can picture that. But then again, a lot of people, me included, were highly skeptical of a Heath Ledger Joker, and we all know how that turned out.
Why so serious?
So who's to say Mark Hamill wouldn't work? He definitely has the voice down. So with a bit of makeup and costume work, who knows? Anyway, let's move on and take a look at the story, shall we? The game begins with Batman approaching Arkham Asylum in his Batmobile. He's just captured the Joker who recently escaped, and he's on his way to put him back in the asylum. Shortly after Batman arrives at Arkham, the Joker breaks free of his captors, sets free most of Arkham's inmates, and takes control of the asylum. Batman now has to hunt down the Joker and his henchmen and stop him and his sinister plans. There is a bit more to the story than that, and there are a few twists and turns here and there, but to keep this relatively spoiler-free, this is the basic gist of it. The storyline might not be anything all that spectacular, but it's more than good enough for a Batman game. For the most part, it's fairly straightforward, but there are a few surprises once in a while. It also makes it more reasonable that the game is set only at Arkham, which could have been a bit of a problem if the storyline didn't make up for it, which it does. I mean, it might have been nice to be able to travel around Gotham as you wished, but with this storyline, that wouldn't be appropriate, at least not in my opinion. So overall, I think the story works great. Okay, so we've looked at some of the better parts of this game, and you may be thinking that there aren't really any flaws with it. Unfortunately, you'd be wrong. For starters, the intro sequence, the one where you're walking into the asylum, is nice, but I don't understand why it couldn't be a cutscene. There's nothing, not one thing in this entire sequence that warrants it being a playable feature. All you do is walk down a long corridor, occasionally stopping to wait for a door to open, and listening to a bunch of dialogue while doing so. That's what cutscenes are for. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing truly horrible about this sequence, but it just feels completely unnecessary. Another bigger problem is the fact that the detective mode ends up being used a bit too much. For those of you who don't know, there is a feature in the game known as detective mode. This mode highlights enemies, vantage points and accessible vent covers and gives you more information about your surroundings. However, it also shades everything differently and makes certain things invisible or see-through. Considering what this mode is used for and how helpful it is, you'll more than likely end up using it a lot. Probably most of the time actually, and that's exactly what the problem is. As I said, this is a really nice and helpful feature, but when you end up using it 80 to 90% of the time, that's not so good. I mean, the scenery and architecture of the game is fantastic, but you end up not being able to see it most of the time. Anyway, as many or as few flaws as this game might have, it makes up for them by having a lot of unbelievably great stuff as well. I've already showed you a few of them, but there are so many awesome things in this game that I just have to show you a few more of them. Take the upgrade system for instance. As you go through the game, you gain points for various actions, like finding Riddler items or beating up thugs. After you get a certain amount of points, you'll be able to purchase an upgrade. The upgrades include everything from improved armor to new fighting moves and combos, as well as new skills and equipment upgrades. This system works really well, as you can choose which upgrade to get first and last. You may like to improve your armor first, or you may want to increase your moveset and combo list. What really makes this system shine though, is that the upgrades never feel too expensive. It never feels as though it takes too long to acquire a new upgrade. In addition to these upgrades, you will also occasionally acquire new equipment, but those are more tied in with the storyline, so there's not really an upgrade system with those. At any rate, the game's upgrade system is exceptionally good. This game has a very good persistent damage system. While you can see this at least to a certain degree in some rooms after something has changed within it, or with enemies who remain knocked out on the floor where you took them down, the area where it really makes a difference is on Batman himself. You see, during the course of the game, Batman's costume will get torn, the cape will get rips in it, and so forth and so on. You might not think this is such a big deal, but it really does make a difference. It makes it seem more like you and or Batman have actually been through something. No costume would stay perfect after all the stuff Batman goes through in this game, so it just draws you in that much more when you see that Batman and his costume can take some damage as well. Okay, so I should have established by now that this game has a lot of great stuff going for it. But what about the villains of the game? Well, they're all great. They're well designed, have great voice actors, and the encounters with them are, at least for the most part, very exciting and intense. There is, however, one of them I would like to point out as especially spectacular though, and that's Scarecrow. Before I move on, I have to warn you that this is going to be a bit of a spoiler, so be forewarned. Anyway, about Scarecrow. During the course of the game, you will have a boss fight with him 3 times. And while all 3 encounters bring their own unique and exciting twists to the table, the third and final encounter is the really brilliant one. When I first got to this part, I freaked out. You see, this part pulls sort of an Eternal Darkness move on you, and if you understand what I mean by that, you should already know where I'm going with this. When you get to the hallway that leads into this encounter, it will suddenly seem as though the game completely freezes, crashes, and then restarts. This is an ingenious way of incorporating Scarecrow's fear element into the game, as it actually does kind of scare the gamer. It definitely scared me. Granted, the fear didn't last for long, as it doesn't take too long for the average gamer to realize what's going on. I mean, when the game restarts, the opening is almost identical to the real one. Almost being the key word here. You see, there are some subtle and some not so subtle changes to various surroundings and elements throughout the new opening, and even the most brain-dead gamer should notice the switch between the Joker and Batman inside the Batmobile if they don't catch any of the changes before that. Some of the more observant gamers might even notice a few subtle hints as to what's going to happen before the game even freezes. There's the fact that the music changes, then there's a fairly odd message over the Asylum speaker system.
Did anyone patch the game last night?
And you can also see Batman coughing. But I still think what actually happens comes as a bit of a shock to anyone who doesn't know. Yes, you might figure out that a new Scarecrow encounter is about to take place, but it's a bit harder to guess that it's going to involve the game seemingly crashing. So all in all, I think this sequence is a fucking masterpiece. So now that I've ruined the best part of the game for anyone who haven't played it yet, I'll just quickly mention a few more things. The first being the fighting system. There are, as you should have guessed by now, a fair bit of fighting to be had in this game, and the fighting system used in this game is excellent. It is extremely simple, but it just works so great that it doesn't matter. You use one button for punching and kicking, one for counterattacking, one for dodging, and one for stunning the enemy. You can also use a combination of buttons for throws or immediate takedowns, and you can also implement the batarangs in the fights. This system is, as stated, very simple, and some players may see it as simple button mashing, at least at first, but you'll quickly realize that you'll eventually have to learn how to dodge effectively, when to stun enemies instead of punching them, and how to time your counterattacks. This system feels very intuitive and easy to learn, but it can be somewhat tricky to master it, which, in my opinion, is what makes it so great. Well, that's about all there is to say about Batman Arkham Asylum. It's an extremely good game, with only a few minor flaws. If you haven't played this game yet, go buy it now, even if you're not a huge Batman fan. It will make you a fan, it is that good. No true gamer should be without this game in his collection, and if you think I'm wrong in saying so, you clearly haven't played it. So, to all those gamers out there still wondering about this game, stop wondering and go buy this fucking game. Now! So, that about wraps it up for this week. Thanks for watching, check back next week, and in the meantime, go enjoy this epic game. Bye.